One of my most vivid food memories in life is the moment I discovered shepherd's pie, and it doesn't involve me eating it. Around 7th grade, I was on a play date after school playing video games at my friend Gavin's house, when suddenly a bowl was placed in front of him. Nothing for me, only for Gavin. Some kind of glorious situation. Stewed ground beef with peas and corn, crowned with this fluffy baked mashed potato. Everything about it made sense to me. It had twice baked potato energy. And for a picky eater like me, ground beef anything was like a comfort blanket. This is what a 5-star meal looked like to me. And with nothing for me, I just sat there sad, watching my friend eat this Michelin star meal while I just fiddled my controller. I've never forgotten that moment or shepherd's pie. It is one of my favorite things to eat, and today we give it the upgrade it deserves. This is the hash brown shepherd's pie. You know, what can I say, guys? This video didn't turn out as planned. Now, after doing about 650 videos in 8 years on this channel, when I fail, typically you never see that. You see a polished product, something that was tested and refined before you get to see it. And while I spent all week on this, polished is not what I would call this recipe.
That looks both delicious and all at the same time.
And normally this video would never even be posted. But you're about to see me in rare form as I deteriorate physically in front of your eyes. I can't describe to you how much this one hurt, because this one physically hurt. All while I'm just trying to hit deadlines in my career, which are seemingly never ending. So let's get back into the video. Oh, god damn, dude. I don't know what to do. Now, the first thing we have to do is handle the hash brown crust. It is a bit of a tricky one if you don't do a few steps to save yourself a bunch of headaches. Now, I don't do much science stuff here. I think it takes you too far out into la la land. But this is something important to know if you're a fan of crispy potatoes. If you've ever tried to make hash browns at home, usually you take a raw potato, you grate it on a box grater, you wring out all the moisture, and then you toss it into a pan and you cook it. But almost always the potatoes turn gray or red. They oxidize. There's so much moisture in them that they steam instead of fry, and they're pretty much never crispy. It's why most people don't like In-N-Out fries, is because as admirable as it is to cut a potato fresh and then fry it, there's too much moisture in it to stay crispy. We need to achieve a thing called retrogradation. This is when we cook the potato up into a certain point and then chill it down to a certain temperature, gelatinizing the starch, which actually makes the starch inside the potato, instead of retain moisture, it gelatinizes and expels the moisture, allowing this to get crispy. And so here I just have some par-cooked potatoes chilled. And to do this, it's very, very easy. All you have to do is add some rinsed russet potatoes to a pot and fill it with cold water. Bring it up to a boil, then drop it down to a simmer and gently simmer the potatoes almost all the way through. If you were ever curious what the internal temperature should be to a perfect baked potato, it's around 205 degrees. Knowing that, I can temp the potatoes, and when they reach about 175 to 180 degrees, I know they're about 3/4 of the way cooked, still a bit al dente in the center when they're poked. That's when I want to remove them from the water, place them on a wire rack, and allow them to cool a bit before placing them in the fridge overnight, uncovered, or until the internal temperature dips below 42 degrees. We're at 36. That degradation process has been achieved. Not only will they get crispy, they're sort of cooked but firm, which will allow us to shred them. This is what would give you like real diner-style hash browns, crispy, lacy. Or you could dice them up, cut them into fries, and you're going to ensure a crispy result. Now, these are prepped. We're gonna take care of those once our beef is cooking, because it's gonna take a minute. And here are the base ingredients to make an incredible shepherd's pie. Now, we've got our ground lamb, about 1¼ pounds, something like that, of ground lamb. Now, shepherd's pie is ground lamb. If you wanted to add ground beef, that's fine. You're making cottage pie. Same thing. We've got our mirepoix. A mirepoix is about 2 parts onion to 1 part carrot celery, so we'll do about 8 ounces of onion, 4 ounces of celery, 4 ounces of carrots. Tomato paste, Worcestershire sauce. My little secret is some Guinness. That's gonna add some deep richness to it. We've got some brodo, some chicken stock, beef stock, whatever you want, frozen corn and peas, and those add a bit of a pop at the end, sweetness, texture, and we add those at the end so they kind of maintain some of their life. Now this is where the cracks in my armor start to appear. This is the moment I start to sense that this is gonna be a problem for me. Let's see how chopping vegetables feels. Something like this, a chili, a bolognese, a shepherd's pie. We're going to use basically similar methods. Obviously without red wine, we're using stout, but we need a mirepoix and we're going to use a food processor to dice it up the same way we would make bolognese. So we don't need to dice it, thank God, but we do like to break it down just to ensure a nice even processing in the food processor. Now, I don't know what's wrong with my shoulder. I just know there's not one comfortable position to sleep in, and thus I haven't slept in a week. It's just this radiating sharp pain that seems to get worse when I sleep. I'm a bit delirious, and now the pain is just starting to take over. Just cut it into segments, into chunks, get it into a bowl. Celery, take the tops and the bottoms off, dice them up. I think that might be all that we need. Just gonna peel it, cut it into little planks, just give it a rough little dice. Smash some garlic to release it from their papers. Toss those in as well. We can set up our food processor, get everything in. We're just gonna pulse it. You just wanna process it to a mince, not into a puree, just to kind of blend in with the ground lamb. Clean up the sides a little bit. This is just like we would with chili or bolognese. You could do it finer, a little bit coarse. You can kind of make it how you want. And get it into a bowl. And we're gonna rinse this out because we're gonna just use it a bit later for the potatoes. Make sure it's dry before you use it again. Now we're gonna thicken this with a roux. So we're gonna need about 3 tablespoons of butter and an equal amount of flour. You can eyeball it. Now while we're here, we can prep and dice the potatoes that are gonna go on top. We're doing potatoes 2 ways here. Now I've had bad shoulders for 20 years. When I'm not cooking on this show, usually you find me leaning up against the wall with a ball working out a knot in my neck. Does anybody else do this? It's the only way I feel like I can find any sort of relief, even if momentarily. Nothing like a granite countertop corner to get a knot out your back. For a moment, I feel a touch of release. Look at that functionality back. So we go ahead and peel our potatoes. I'm gonna drop it in some cold water to keep it from oxidizing. The other thing is, if you got a brown spot, that little rivet at the end of the peeler, that's to do this, to scoop it out. Now we can take them out, cut them in half, lay them flat, and we're gonna slice them in half again. Then we're gonna dice them up and get it back in the water. That's probably too much. We can just rinse out that water, add some fresh water, and then we can throw those onto the stove, and I think we're ready to get everything cooking. Now to start, I'm gonna get a nice big pan on the stove. You could use a Dutch oven, or I'm gonna use my saucier. I'm gonna get it nice and hot, and then coat the pan with some olive oil. Once it's hot, I'm gonna take my ground lamb and press it into the pan. Try and get a nice flat layer of meat making contact with the hot oil. Then I'm gonna season that side of the meat, and I'm gonna use a flat wooden spoon and just start breaking up the meat, chopping it. I usually make my way across the surface one way, then turn the spoon and sort of chop it into dices the other way. That's not going to break them up, but then we stir up the beef and we just keep working it until the meat form tiny little clusters, which is what we're looking for. And it's much easier to do when some of that meat is still a little pink. Once it kind of cooks through, it's harder to break them up into a tiny mince. After you've separated all of the meat, the pink should be just about cooked through. And now there's a lot of moisture being released from the meat. And just like we make a bolognese, we're going to allow that moisture to release, start steaming in the pan and pooling, and then allow it time patiently to evaporate, leaving only the fat and the oil in the pan, which starts to fry the meat. You start to hear almost like a steaming, sizzling sound transition into a frying, popping sound. And that's what you're looking for. Now we can see some color starting to develop on the meat, and once it's nice and browned, we can remove the meat with a slotted spoon, create space for the vegetables. Once the meat is out of the pan, we can add in the vegetables, we can season the vegetables, and just like the meat, the vegetables are going to release moisture. It's actually going to deglaze the bottom of the pan, and just like the meat, we want to cook and evaporate all of that moisture so that we can start to develop the natural sugars in the vegetables. Once the moisture has released and you can start to see some browning developing inside of the pan, we can go ahead and add the meat back to the vegetables. Stir them together, make sure the vegetables distribute into the meat. After a few minutes, I can see some of the grains of vegetable and meat start sticking to the bottom of the pan, which is at the point in which I want to start to add in the flour. I'm gonna add in about 3 tablespoons of flour and get that distributed into the meat. Get it stirred in and cook it for about a minute or 2 before you add in the tomato paste, which, since my arm feels like it's falling off, I must have forgotten to add. We'll add that in a second, but after you added the tomatoes paste and you cooked out the rawness of the tomato, then you would deglaze the pan with about a half a can of Guinness. That's a stout. It's got rich, deep flavor that's going to add a ton of character to our shepherd's pie. Deglaze the pan, scrape up all those bits from the bottom of the pan and cook the alcohol down. Another core flavor of a shepherd's pie is Worcestershire sauce. So we're gonna add a few tablespoons of that into the mix, get that stirred in. There it is, now I remember. So we got the tomato paste in, and then we can go in with the beef stock. And you only wanna add about a cup or 2. You don't wanna loosen it up too much because you want a very thick mixture at the end. So once the stock is in, stir it, add in a sprig of thyme, a bay leaf, bring it up to a boil, and then drop it down to a simmer. We're gonna allow the mixture to thicken and for some of that excess moisture to reduce. And if I'm being honest, in retrospect, this is too loose at this stage for how thick I want it at the end. And that's probably going to become an issue for me later. We're gonna set it off to the side on a super low burner while we get our potatoes onto the stove. I'm gonna get a small pot onto the stove, and then I'm gonna drain off the potatoes I diced that have been soaking in water and add them to the pot. Fill the pot up with some cold water, bring that mixture up to a boil, drop it down to a simmer, and then we're going to cook them until they're extremely soft. No resistance in them whatsoever. And while these 2 things cook, we can prepare our crust. Now, before we go any further, does anybody else feel like being on the internet these days requires you to have to dodge a barrage of bullets like you're in the Matrix? Online safety is more important than ever. But I'm done being so vulnerable and exposed. And that's all thanks to our sponsor today, CyberGhost. CyberGhost routes your traffic through a secure encrypted tunnel, keeping your IP hidden and your data private. Just turn on CyberGhost VPN before you browse. It encrypts and reroutes 100% of your traffic through their secure servers, so no one even knows about your online activity. Not that you have something to hide. Instead of you going straight to the internet, you go through a server that's encrypted and protected, which then takes you to the internet, so the internet doesn't know where you are. What's more, CyberGhost VPN doesn't keep logs, so not even they know what you do online. With just a few clicks, you can change your virtual location and unlock geo-blocked content with tons of streaming services, including Netflix, Amazon Prime, and many more. CyberGhost works on all major platforms: Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, even works on smart TVs and consoles. And it's perfect for sharing with your family because one subscription covers 7 devices. And right now they're offering $2.03 per month plus 4 free months. That's 84% off, along with a 45-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 support when you sign up with the discount in my description. Now let's jump back into the video. Now while those get cooking, we can work on our crust. Now the skin should kind of come right off. You just sort of scrape at it. And as you can see, the potatoes are pretty resilient. I bet frying up all of these little potato skins would be a really good snack or a topping. So now we got our food processor with our grater attachment. I want to go like that, right? Problem is I need this to hit the safety latch. So I'm just gonna lift this up, I'm gonna press down, then I'm gonna go. That's what you're looking for. Those make some perfect hash browns. Now for this technique, we're going to need a tart pan. I got a fairly deep one, that's better if you have it, and one that the bottom pops out from. First step, got some cooking spray, and I'm just gonna hit all around. And then we're literally gonna start to build the wall. The wall is gonna give it some structure. It's also gonna shrink a little bit. So you wanna just kind of compress it lightly, then we can build the base. You can use a cup measure for this. Kind of make sure there's some nice stability everywhere. There's no real gaps. I don't really want them hanging off the edge really. Then one more time with the spray. Just like, you know, a little suntan lotion. Then I got all this extra that I'll save for breakfast, hash browns. They're gonna hold real nice. Now I've got a 425-degree oven preheated. This is gonna get popped right in there. And that's gonna cook for about 30, 45 minutes. And we're really going to try and look to massage color. That's not an evenly shaped thing, right? So what you're gonna see is the edge start to darken a little faster, and we want kind of uniform browning, so we're gonna work through it. After about 35 minutes or so, the potatoes are cooked, and as we learned earlier, around 205, it's about the perfect temperature to mash potatoes. So I'm gonna take the potatoes off the stove, I'm going to drain out the water, add them back to the pot, and a very essential step in making nice fluffy mashed potatoes is allowing them to steam dry. Let all of that excess moisture evaporate. We don't want them in our mashed potatoes. Now our stew has been cooking. It's reduced, but it's still not where it should be. I'm gonna remove the thyme and the bay leaf, and I'm gonna start to check the consistency. And it's a nice sauce consistency, but for shepherd's pie, it's still too loose. So to thicken it, I'm just gonna add a little bit of a slurry, about a tablespoon of flour. I'm gonna mix some water into it to make a nice loose paste. Then add it into the mixture, and let's see how that thickens it up. We're just gonna let that cook, see if it thickens up, see if it reduces a little bit more. But you know, nothing's going right today. While the potatoes cool, we can shred some cheese. And the basic is some sharp cheddar. I like to blend it with some aged cheddar. You know, it's got some of that crystals in there. This adds just a little bit more flavor. I'm just gonna shred some of that. There's my cheese. It wasn't worth it, but that's ready. Now we can take our potatoes, add just like a tablespoon or two of cream. We don't really want this super crazy creamy. And then at least 4, 5, maybe 6 tablespoons of butter. Load in your potatoes, and then just run them through potato ricer. And we can go ahead and just start to work that in and assess the creaminess. A little salt. Handful of that cheese. And now it's important to remember, for these mashed potatoes, we don't need them super loose or like a puree, palm puree. We need them on the stiffer side so they don't melt when we broil them on top of the pie. And once it's cooled down, I'm gonna take an egg and add an egg yolk to it. That egg yolk's gonna sort of help it bind together, hold up while it bakes, almost souffle a bit. Next, we're gonna fill a piping bag. I just want to kind of work it down as far as I can get it. I don't want to fill it up too much. I'd rather do 2 than fill it up. Cinch it up and then use a rubber band to hold it in place. Now if you need to keep that warm, you could just have some simmering water and just let it stay at temperature. Now I'm constantly checking the crust, and every time I check it and it looks a little dry, I give it a spritz of oil just to help facilitate some even browning across the surface, which is inherently difficult because of the shape. So now, that's what it's looking like so far, right? We're getting some nice crisping. Now I just made these little pie edges. And I'm hoping to really gently sort of build a little guard. And we're gonna keep letting that go. I'm also gonna raise the temperature up to 450, try and get a little bit more color on it. So in the sake of trying to get that center to brown as fast as the edges are, I popped the broiler on, got the edges protected, and I'm trying to get some color and to create some stability to hold the shepherd's pie in the center. And it seems to be working. The idea is to get some color going there, then to allow it to bake and solidify before filling it. See the difference? Now that's crisp. We're gonna still pop it back in, turn the broiler off, go back to 450, and just try and now gently, evenly golden brown. Could probably start working it and filling it now, but the more golden brown we get it, the more secure we get it. And so now our meat is ready. We go ahead and add in the frozen corn and peas. Starches in that also help to thicken it up a bit more. I don't know about you, but to me that's glorious. Richness of flavor. It tastes Irish. Those little pops, beautiful. So now I'm just gonna keep this warm, wait for the crust to get done. Now I just removed the guards. I'm gonna give it another spritz of oil just to get the inside going. Try and get it nice, as even brown as possible, and then we can fill it up. Then I go try and rehab myself, try and feel some relief, but I got a little carried away. And as you can see, the crust is a little dark. I wouldn't call it burnt, but a little dark.
Are you sure about that?
Now what's nice is some of the frayed bits we can sort of just pick at. Get them into the center and hide them. Looks beautiful to me, to be honest. So now all we're gonna do is a little protective layer, a little cheese on the bottom, our slightly cooled and thickened stew meat. Then we take our potatoes and we cut a nice sharp angle. You're gonna see it come out the side, so you're gonna stand it up and you're gonna start to pipe. Readjust and start over. And some cheese on top. Back into that oven. Once I start to see a little bit of that browning around the edges of the potato, it's a good sign. From there, I like to turn the broiler on and try and create a nice crust on the surface of the potatoes. That crust is sort of what's iconic in shepherd's pie. It's why I love it so much. It's that twice baked potato vibe, and the broiler helps us achieve that effect beautifully. Then we can get it out of the oven, see how we did. Isn't that glorious? We just gotta let it cool down. Now, honestly, I'm thinking I did it. I'm thinking I got out of this thing alive. I had an incredible idea that I've executed properly. Can't wait to go and relax when this is done. So now I have a little bowl. This is gonna allow the bottom of the tart pan to pop out if we're lucky. And when I'm looking for the outer part of the tart tin to just slide off like it did in all of my tests and reveal a perfect hash brown crusted shepherd's pie. But life had other plans. Wait, maybe if I turn it, it's gonna look good. And in this moment, the feeling of defeat settles deeply inside of me. Oh my God. That's particularly painful. I tested this for days. I'm blacking out in pain. And so I called Dave, my producer, my emotional support animal, and break the bad news to him. Oh, God damn, dude. I don't know what to do. Now, I don't often share with you my screw-ups. I actually spend a lot of time screwing up behind the scenes, so I don't do it here. But I've made this 4 times this week, various different ways. I was positive this was gonna work, but it didn't. My shoulder physically can't make it again tomorrow, and so I'm going to lean into my vulnerability and share the screw-up with you. But to show you that when you screw it up, like, you still at least get an incredible shepherd's pie. Sure, it's not a hash brown, but I'm gonna keep cracking at this, and maybe we'll revisit it another day. This video was a struggle for me. You saw it. This dish has been a struggle the moment I laid my eyes on it. I am human, and I do screw up, and today is one of them, and you got to see it. I'm not quite sure if it's because I was blacking out in pain most of this video, or if the idea is structurally not viable, but we'll revisit it another day. We don't give up. How do you think we got here? I'll actually provide the recipe for both the shepherd's pie and the hash browns, and you and I keep this just between ourselves, right? Don't go telling nobody that this happened. Okay? Look, this is the reality I'm coming to grips with as a guy who just turned 40 with bad shoulders, who can't really afford any sort of hiccups in his schedule. Thankfully, my arm is feeling better a few days later. I don't know what it was, but this job moves on regardless. Now we're gonna move past from this. I'm gonna still work on that crust, but we're on to the next video, and I appreciate you watching this disaster. Thank you to CyberGhost for sponsoring this video. Anyway, that's all that I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself. Ah!